I'm Brenda Miller, and I am the education coordinator here at the Ward Museum. And usually my role here involves mostly environmental education, especially in the world of birding. But I also ended up developing a little side hobby as a result of the pandemic, and that is mandala rock painting, which is basically using dotting tools to create these lovely little patterns on smooth rocks like this. And this is something that I was introduced to by a friend of mine, and then because of COVID and staying home all the time, just found myself really getting into it and found it to be a nice kind of calming but immersive sort of activity. So let's get into rock painting. So there's a few different styles of mandala rock painting, and I've just got a few examples here. This is the one that we'll be working on today, which you can see is kind of a little bit more like a flower, just like some random different sizes, and some like smaller dots framing larger dots, things like that. This one here I designed to look a little bit like a sea urchin shell, so lots more vertical lines, trying to fill in spaces a little bit more closely as well. You don't even need perfectly round rocks to paint a rock mandala either. Like this one, I just found this broken rock that I thought looked really neat and ended up just doing this kind of vertical approach on it, and turned out pretty well. And then one of my personal favorites is doing this sort of swirly star pattern, so just kind of branching out in a bit more of a geometric shape as we go out. So all sorts of different approaches. Like I said, we'll be focusing on this one. This is kind of a more introductory, kind of easy sort of pattern to get started on. So in terms of materials, I have my own set of dot painting tools, and these are fairly affordable. I ordered them off of Amazon for I think around $15 or something like that. If you're not interested in doing that though, you can also very easily just get some wooden dowel rods from your local hardware or craft store, file them down, and you can use those as your dotting tools as well. We'll be working with acrylic paint today, and I'll be using some of our museum's paint, but it's also nice to just kind of order. This is a set I ordered also from Amazon that's smaller quantities, but a wider variety of colors, and you really don't need a lot of paint to work with this, so this has lasted me for a pretty good amount of time. Rocks that you look for, the most important thing is for them to have a very smooth surface, so you're not having little pockets of paint kind of splurging into uneven shapes. So I'll be using one of mine here. And you might notice on here that I have scratched a little star shape in here with just a white colored pencil. And that's really just to give you kind of a starting point. So we'll be putting our center dot in the middle here where all of those points meet. And then those outer lines will be framing for our first and second rows of dots. So that'll be just kind of easy for us to spatially navigate our canvas here. And of course, it's definitely useful just to keep your paper towel handy. Q-tips are nice to have as well in case you have a mistake and just need to cover something up. And one thing I don't have here, but I definitely like to do with these once we're done painting and they've dried, is to go over them with some sort of sealant spray. And there's a few different kinds, some that have more of a gloss finish. I prefer to use one that's more of a matte finish, so it's a little less shiny, but personal preference. And just a simple little paint palette. So let's get into it. So in case you couldn't see earlier, there is our white scratched out little star pattern there to give us our starting point. I always kind of like to remind myself where I collected some of these rocks. Like this one I think came from a little bird watching trip that I took over in Southern Oregon that I just happened to find. So I don't know, it's always nice to consider some of the stories of where these rocks have been. Now, I think it's always a good thing to kind of start out just by taking some of the different sizes of your rods and placing them against the rock to just imagine what the space would be like before you actually apply paint. Keeping in mind that sometimes the paint will be a little bit larger than the actual stick itself. So I'm thinking this one is actually a pretty good starting size for this size of rock. So I'm gonna go over here, and when we dab our paint, let me see, I feel like I'm gonna start with orange. When we dab our paint, we just wanna cover the surface of the stick. We're not dipping the entire stick all the way into the paint, so it should just cover the top of it like so. And then we just very gently dab it on the surface. So we get a nice round dot there in the center. And we always clean off our dotting tools between applications so that we don't build up on paint and start mixing up some colors into something that we don't want. So there's our great starting central dot. So our next point is to look at the dots that we're going to be putting on those white lines. And again, I'm starting with just kind of seeing what dots might make for a good fit. This one feels like this might be a little large, but I think we can make it work because you can see I've got some pretty small ballpoints on some of these here as well. So let's go in with, let's switch to blue. And again, just dabbing the surface of it. And I'm going to go a little bit away from the dot so that there's just a little bit of space between this dot and the central dot. That's not quite as much space as I was hoping for, but that's okay. Sometimes it's nice to have them pretty close together. And usually for this first round of dots, I actually like to work with dots directly across from each other just to kind of get myself oriented. And that way it will turn out to be a little bit more evenly spaced. There we go. So we've got our starting points there. This is looking very vibrant so far. And now I've got space between these blue dots. So we're actually gonna go in now with a fairly small dotting tool. I'm thinking, yeah, maybe this size here to fill in a smaller dot in between here. And I'll go into our yellow. Now with the ballpoints like this, it can be very easy to just completely submerge it in paint. Again, we only want to dip the tip of it in paint, like so. All right, looking pretty good so far. Now, same kind of thing, always checking about the size of dot to go into the next round. So we're gonna be going in and filling in these kind of bigger gaps, again, between the blue circles, but I'm going for a larger size now. And there's no right or wrong answer in terms of what size of dot to go to next or what color to go to next. It's all just kind of whatever seems right to you in the moment. So once again, I am taking one of my sticks and just kind of lining it up to see how it fits. I think that one will work fairly well, so I am going to go in with my green this time. One thing I want to mention as well is I'm not necessarily pushing the dotting tool completely flush against the rock. When you get a decent amount of paint dabbed on the tool, you really don't need to press down very much. You just give it a light tap, and you can even see the paint kind of pooling on the rock around your tool, and you know that it's that's pretty much all you need. And same type of thing, we're going to be taking another dot size and going in between my green dots now. And for this, I think I'm going to be going with another one of my bigger ballpoints here. And let's go back in with the yellow again. And we're really just going to keep doing the same type of thing for a few rounds where we really just kind of fill out the rock a little bit. And once we get up to a certain size of dot, then we'll be able to play a little bit more with some more decorative patterns. Now this, actually I feel like that's too small. Yeah, I think I'm gonna step up to a larger dot size here. So, I don't know. I'm thinking I'm gonna go back to, let's go back to my orange. And one thing that I'm noticing, sometimes you might find that your paint looks a little thin on the rock, like it's just not popping up as bright of a color as you were hoping. So in that case, sometimes it's nice to really just go over them one more round, just to really fill in that color. So since I went with a fairly large dot size for that round, I'm going to actually, instead of filling in these gaps with another dot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my smaller ballpoints, like I'm thinking this one. And what can be really fun now is to take this smaller size and just to create a little ring around the larger dots. So to do that, I find that it's most helpful to start with the point directly opposite of the center so that you have that center alignment, and then just start adding points on either side. And you can do 5 points, 7 points, whatever comes to your mind in the moment. So let's go back to my blue color here. Okay, so we've got like those furthest points established, so now I can use that as a little kind of center guiding line to be able to form a more complete ring around my big orange dots. All right, so we've got the nice little ring of blue dots around all of my orange dots for a kind of like a flower inside of a flower sort of effect. And that you can see has also kind of filled in this space between my orange dots a little bit now. So we're gonna go back in with, I think, my yellow, and we're going to take a smaller dot and go in here. Normally I would be trying to fill out this space a little bit more, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to add one more little touch to the outside here. And then I may go back and fill it in more later, who knows. But I'm going to take now a ballpoint, and what can be fun is to now go into like a little vertical line following that yellow dot that I just made and kind of go outward in smaller sizes. So sticking with my yellow. So now it's even giving kind of like almost like the beginnings of a spider web pattern, which could be really cool. Now, the next thing that I want to do with this, you might have noticed in some of my other mandalas here that we've got layers of dots happening. So we're going to give this one a little moment to dry, and then we'll go back over it with some additional paint and see if we can add some additional dimension to it. All right, so now we've given this a pretty decent amount of time to dry, so we can go over some of our larger dots and just add a little dimension to it. So I'm going to go with one of my, my bigger ballpoints here. And we're gonna, again, starting in the center and moving out, that way there's less risk of smudging some of the paint. So I'm thinking let's go in the middle here with our green. We don't have as much green on here. And we'll just add a little dot in the middle there. And me being me, I like to try to make my dots as circular as possible, but when we're going over a second layer, it can be a little harder to make them perfectly round, but that's okay. And now we can go over, I'm thinking let's go over that green ring there. And let's see, a good size, once again, checking the size of our tools with the size of the dot. That might be a little large. Let's go down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And let's go over that with the yellow again. And yeah, I think just for our final round, we're just gonna go over those big orange dots. Come back to a bigger ballpoint. Let's try that out. And we'll go back to our blue since we've got that nice blue ring around them. All right. And I think that's about all the extra layering I want to do, but you can see how just by going over with a second layer to add some of the smaller dots inside, it just adds some nice dimension to this, makes it a lot more interesting. So what we're going to do now, we're going to wait for this to dry again, especially that big green dot in the middle there. And then we'll go over it with a quick sealant just so you can see how that affects the colors in the paint. So we'll be right back with that. So we just came back from giving this a quick spray with our sealant outside. And I used a matte sealant, so it's not very glossy, but you can find glossier ones to give it a nice sort of shiny finish. But what it did is it just helped the colors pop a little bit more. The color of the rock in the background is a little bit darker now, so it's got this nice kind of a finish to it, and that's also just going to help protect your paint from the elements in case you want to set your rock outside. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope this was an enjoyable experience for you and that you get creative with your own rock mandalas. And of course, if you're interested, feel free to check out our website for future drop-in art programs. Take care, everyone.